All right. So let me sort of jump to the African burial um,
Ground. Hmm.
project there. You worked with Rodney
Yeah.
Leon on that one.
Hmm.
What was the challenge with that particular project?
Well, what remains of the burial ground as open space is first of all, it's a fraction of the area of the collect pond that was a
Hmm.
burial ground.
And that space was discovered when they were doing the excavation
For the
for the federal
For the
court.
Ted Weiss courthouse
Yeah,
building.
federal courthouse building.
But the truth of the matter is, they've been discovering remains all through there because there are buildings everywhere.
Hmm.
There are roadways. There's a roadway everywhere. There's infrastructure everywhere. So that discovering remains was not new, but
There were concentrated sort of bodies in that particular area.
right this couldn't be rationalized,
Okay.
and
I mean, rationalized away.
yeah, rationalized away. And so the area that remains is small. The area that remains is rectangular.
Mm.
Um, the so those two things sort of, and they're it's surrounded by, quite frankly, the sides of buildings. There's not even that much that anything faces the burial ground.
Yes.
There's no frontage, right?
Right.
So
On first glance, it's like an afterthought.
it very much has the feel of an afterthought, and the issue that I don't know when or if this would ever get resolved. Um, as long as the building that's used for city planning stands there. And I'm not saying that the building should be taken down, but if and when the building is ever replaced, its proximity to the burial ground should be looked
Mhm.
at, because that edge. But there's no focused edge on that surrounds the fragment that remains. That's the first challenge. The second, Rodney's design, Aris's design is very singular. The design itself is an object.
Mm-hmm.
So how that object, and actually I think in terms of its objectivity, being an object, it has a clearly defined relationship to the edge, but that's not the same thing as an open space relationship to the burial ground.
Got it.
So there's some tension there. But the other part was that,
So what did you think you were left to do? Because you have the space, which were discussing as an
Right.
afterthought. You have the architectural design, which is an object.
and then there was program, which was that a large part of the surrounding area had to accommodate participants in events. Like they do things around the libation court, and people spill out into the lawn, so
Mhm.
that has to be safe and accessible.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most challenging things there was a, like, I should know by now, like 80-foot long by 12-foot wide. I'm sure it's longer than that. Zone that was called the interment zone, and this is where the 400 remains that had been excavated from the Ted White site were reinterred on the site.
Mm-hmm.
And how that could be commemorated in a sort of contextual way, and not sort of set up as a sort of funerary because we had the monument, which is itself not necessarily funerary architecture, but so you don't want to start to introduce funerary architecture on the site in order to do this. And in reading about the collect pond and reading about the circumstances of the burials and reading about the nature of living in these communities, my feeling was that everything that was happening on the site was sort of smooth and manicured and controlled and honed. But this was about surviving and roughness and marginality. And so what we wanted to do was take that zone and treat it in a way that we knew that over time, the sarcophagi in which the interments happened, they were going to decay. And when they decayed, then the earth in these areas would fall in, right? So we wanted to manage that collapse. We wanted to sort of set up an expectation of topographic change within that zone. And that's really what those mounds are. They're not symbolism or seven days. No. This was an rather than create a flat area that was going to collapse in, we wanted to sculpt it so that when it collapsed, that became more suggestive of the original topography of Manhattan and the original sort of need to find a place.